I'm going to read two pieces. They're companion pieces, and I'll just begin. The first one is called Came a Day. There came a day where they decided to be found. The remains of 155 inmates from a girls' reformatory school in Dublin. One of 40 or more scattered around the country. Magdalene laundries, they were called. Each of these laundries, run by the Sisters of Charity, did big business with national companies like Guinness and Cleary's, and even Orison Oaktheron, the President's residence. Laundering, pressing, stitching, starching, sheets, altar cloths, fine clothing, underwear. All this labour by 10,000 Irish girls and women, banished there by families or parish priests or local courts for crimes as minor as being a petty thief, or for being pregnant at 15 or 16, or for being a source of shame to a family, for being abused and left wanting in some way. All these girls, the youngest 7, the oldest in her 80s, incarcerated in these laundries, some for months, some for years, some who became so institutionalized they could not be returned. And everyone pretended like they had no clue what was going on behind these closed doors. Slave labour, it was called, in a 1,000-page report. A nation's shame, the Prime Minister called it recently, after first diminishing the story's veracity, backtracking and offering a nation's apology to all the women and girls who had had their lives destroyed. And none of this would have seen the light of day, I'm guessing, had not those 155 chosen to be found, unearthed by a speculator when he bought a convent property, made the mass grave discovery. One woman, a former inmate, reporting to the Commission it was normal for girls to fall ill and never be seen again. Normal. I am telling you this today because I am thinking of such things as what makes a nation so ashamed of itself, so invested in shoving its women and girls into slave labour, that a nation would close its left eye to such institutions, pretend they weren't there, yet with its right eye spot an escaping worker and march her back in. I am thinking of such things as a collective conscience, so mired in its own self-hatred, so active in its own addiction to appeasement in any form, that it would use such girls for rape, torture, perverse pleasure. What is it I am trying to tell you? I am trying to tell you that a truth will come back from its grave, will raise its brittle and bony hand from the buried past, will break the crusting soil tamped down by those who tried to rewrite history. I am trying to tell you that if science has proven that we are a product of our environment, that if we have coursing through our 60 trillion cells the memory of our survival from amoeba to amphibian, from single cell to this, that if we have the recollections of all we encoded over millennia, of what is good and what is not, arsenic or wine, open hand or fist, I am telling you that if each generation's memory folds onto the last, so that a second or third generation child born into a ghetto will come out fists high and ready to fight, more so than her suburban neighbour down the road, then I am that girl, born into a country that so hated its own, it buried hundreds of women in unmarked graves, enslaved thousands more for an entire century behind church gates and convent walls. I am telling you that the sum of Ireland's disappeared speaks today through me, that I know what it is to be so turned in on oneself as to shrivel at the mere sight of one's image in a mirror. I am saying that today I want to write it down, all the wrong history embedded in my veins, and then when it is all poured out, run dry, I will rest for a while, for a good long while. This second piece is called The Whistle. It always began with a long, low note, followed by a high, piercing pitch. His whistle, the one he trained me like a dog to follow, long before I could remember that whistling was a happy thing, a thing people did at the shop door to pass the time till John Joe arose and let them in, or something they did walking down the road after Mass, the burden of their sins lifted by another Sunday of duty seen through. I did not know that whistling was anything other than a way to call dogs, that I must somehow be one in human form, who might one day sprout a narrow tail, weeping mange, along my scalp of long blonde hair. I did not know that any farmer walking by, roaring and whistling to a sheepdog or collie, was truly only calling Shep or Fred or Cloudy to their sides, thinking they were calling me. That somehow, somewhere, all these men had secretly agreed, if they whistled going past my yard, I would follow to the corner of a mucky field, or an old shed, or a deserted graveyard, and lie down, wait for them to land, unzip, unload, then shove me out the half-rusted door or fallen gate or stony ditch like some stray bitch in heat that no one could abide. I did not know that whistling was sometimes just for fun, that when a man whistled, a girl wasn't supposed to come running like some beagle hound in training for the drag hunts all summer long, when all the local lads would blow bugles, bellow ill-fitting names, chosen names depicting a softness in these farmers, names like Diamond and Good Lad and Daisy, suggesting they had hearts and gentle sides, just not for me. They'd whistle for their darlings to come first over the hills, to run faster, dig deeper, lunge a slender neck further ahead than the racing hound behind them. Each dog howling with a whetted hunger, tracking the scent of the bloodied trail from the glen 5 miles away to the single village street, each fresh whiff over gorse or brush setting them off anew with wails and cries as though remembering some promise made of sweet reward at the finish line. I'd hear the farmers whistle them home on a summer's evening, wonder if maybe I should be there, yowling with the hounds in front, barreling towards some drunken man who for once might reward my arrival with a hearty pat and a stream of praise, not a poking and prodding as though birthing a calf from some swollen heifer. I could well do with such a claim, I often thought. Could do well with a sash around my neck, commending my speed, a trophy or a gold cup sporting my name, saying this year she ran the drag hunt faster than any hound ever has, broke all records, crossed all terrain with such stealth and such great stamina, 'tis no wonder she came first. Just once, I wanted the whistle to mean something else. Wanted, if I was to follow him like a dog, wanted to have a dog's chance at success. After all, I did everything else that the whistle told. Followed at a safe distance, just like I'd seen Auntie Helena's sheepdog do when she called him in the evening to bring them in, Fred, to bring the cows home. How he'd slink along the ditch behind her as though hiding from the herd, and then dart last minute and nip at hoof and tail, gather them all for milking. I knew what it was to follow along behind at a safe distance, to hug the church wall and round the corners into the shadows, so no one would know it was him I followed, and no one would know what he was surely going to do once I turned the back wall, lay on the ground next to an old priest's grave, that while he grunted and shoved, I'd cock my ear to the wind to catch the yips and squeals of stray dogs in the distance.